Interesting, the change in Kamala. It wasn't too long ago she said, "How dare you say Merry Christmas?" Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And then in this thing, she's saying, "I just want everybody to be able to buy Christmas presents without worrying." What a change.
She's changed a lot. And Donald Trump, after struggling to kind of get where he needed to get, has zeroed in on some great lines. The tax queen is a great line. And the other line about, well, you're talking about all this stuff you want to do. Why don't you do it now? He's starting to get focused, and it's really effective. She says she wants to build all these homes. I'm going to go with the guy that builds things for a living. I mean, she was given trillions of dollars. She couldn't build a single charging station. They call her the tax queen. Once she gets a hold of Harold, he won't be able to buy a second yacht. Every corporation in this country is going to get taxed much higher. It's going to send them overseas. They're going to pass those tax hikes down onto the consumer. She wants price controls. She was laughed out of the room for that. Unrealized gains, laughed out of the room for that. She says she wants write-offs for small businesses. She destroyed small businesses with DEI regulations, environmental red tape, COVID regulations. She's going to continue the same failed policies of Joe Biden, where the American worker never got a raise in 4 years. Under Donald Trump, you got a $7,000 raise. That's a lot of cash. Nobody believes these attacks on these tariffs from Donald Trump. He had tariffs up for 4 years. We never had inflation, and we had a very good economy. Europe right now taxes U.S. car imports 10%. They tax our whiskey 25%. It's okay if we have some tariffs on their stuff. That's fine. We'll get them dropped. American consumers can then buy American. And we've been having these tariffs on imports, I think it was ever since the Revolutionary War, all up until World War I. We never even had income tax, and we got along great. We're just doing this now because we're paying for all of these people's security while they don't have to spend anything on the military, and they can have a nice subsidized social security state. And our Navy protects the shipping lanes so they can sell all their goods all over their world. So it's about time we get a little respect in terms of trade.
Well put. So, Dana, Stephanie Ruhle, I guess it was last week, earlier this week?
Said Bill Maher.
Yeah, said Kamala doesn't need to do interviews. So is this technically not an interview then? What is this?
Well, you have to wonder if if her appearance on Bill Maher was an audition to say, obviously, I'm not going to ask you any hard questions if you come and do an interview. Now, Stephanie Ruhle could surprise.
Yeah.
She's a long-time journalist, and she knows a lot about economics. I watched this speech today with interest, and just like in that first debate between Trump and Biden, I'm watching after about 10 minutes. I was like, pen down. There's nothing here.
Yeah.
And you know that when you have a soup and there's good bits, but you have to hunt around to get them? I felt like that's what her speech was like. What's the news out of the speech? That she grew up in a middle-class family? Like, we know that. She kept saying that she wants an opportunity economy, but she didn't talk about specifics about, like, how to grow the economy. Like, say, here are 4 things I'm going to do. 1, 2, 3, 4. She can't separate herself from the Biden administration because she was a part of it. Remember, she was the deciding vote on the very thing that caused inflation. And so I felt like it's just very thin gruel. I did also notice that she's spending a lot of time in Pennsylvania. She must win Pennsylvania, and I think that they're probably pretty worried right now that she's coming up a little short, especially not just on middle-class voters or independents and undecideds, but watch the Jewish vote in Pennsylvania. It could be significant in terms of either not turning out to vote for her or those deciding to vote for Trump.
She seems like she's having her own energy crisis. Very low energy. Harold, manufacturing is a key component in every industry. I know this when I owned that factory in Malaysia. Those kids worked so hard. How can you actually trust a Democrat who has continued to demonize American businesses and factories because they're so bad for the planet? They prefer to ruin companies, not run them. What say you, Harold?
Good to be with you.
Is
good
it
to be
really?
back around the table. I do not own a yacht. I don't own a second yacht either. And I worked my way in college parking cars and acting as a building security guard.
Are you good
In your
driver?
face, Jesse.
And you'll never own a yacht if Harris is elected.
Couple of things. I kind of like, Dana, I hear you. I think that I wish there were more specifics. I wish that both of them would give us a greater feel for where they're going. But we have something from both of them. she appears to want to frame everything she's doing around the middle class. And I believe a couple of things. The more I hear it, the more I kind of understand the $25,000 to homeowners, first-time homeowners. I don't get how that fully gets us there. The $50,000 to startups, to small businesses, I really get more and more. But I want to hear how it fits in a larger thing. I don't like her 28% tax rate on corporations. I think we have to be mindful of smaller and larger corporations and their ability to compete. But at the same time, Jesse, I totally disagree. The tariffs that he wants to put on goods, this is an automatic tax on everyday Americans who have to afford essentials and food. Now, I can admit the 20% tax or the 20% tax rate for corporations is not good for growth. And I hope that we all, once we digest this and we can get away from some of the politics, the tariffs he's talking about, I don't see how that's going to help the economy. I think if you were to ask economists who are Democrat or Republican and you took out the fact that Donald Trump wants them, I think they would answer consistent with what I am, that tariffs generally are a tax on or inflation for middle class voters.
Why can't you
if
just
you buy that product,
the American product instead of the product from overseas?
Right, but if we don't make the product here,
that's the key point, Harold. If you make, I know. I want to address this. If America makes the product,
right,
then a tariff on a competing product that's subsidized by a country makes sense. But if America doesn't make the product, then you don't have the tariff. I'm with you on that, but I don't think he's talking about a competing product made by China.
Right. So I'm not convinced that that's what he's talking about. But if you're right, then I accept your point. But if I'm right, I hope you can accept mine. Generally, tariffs are a tax on people. If one of the things that's great about what Joe Biden did over the last 4 years is that we invested in our ability to be advanced manufacturers in cities all across the country. So we're going to produce things that we didn't produce prior to COVID. So we can have that debate. My only point is, as we look at these economic plans and economic proposals, I think there's a lot for people to dissect from. My main takeaway, just want to say, my main takeaway is this is her plan. She is intending to try to benefit the middle class. And it appears, in my estimation, what President Trump, the tax cuts for corporations and the tax cuts for wealthy Americans will benefit us around the table more than it will benefit middle class Americans. And I think that is where the American people have to decide whom they think's plan is going to be best for the overall country.
You like the $50,000.
I like that one better than the home one, because
but it's
I'm
not
$50,000. It's essentially $50,000 in tax credits. I'd probably be cleaner with it.
Yes, I think she doesn't say that. She says, "Oh, here's $50,000." No, it's a tax deduction.
But if you own a small business and you're able to deduct $50,000, that's essentially.
Maybe help the small business get started instead of shutting it down, Harold. In your face.
Tariffs don't work.
You know, if you want to talk about tariffs or you interpret tariffs as being a tax, the truth is that American households are now all paying $29,000 a year more as a result of inflation, for which she takes credit of passing that tie-breaking vote that caused the inflation. She should own that, because it's at her feet that the whole thing lays. That's number one. Number two, she's trying to create class warfare. I'm tired of this middle class and he's upper class, and middle class, he's upper. She wants to make the corporate tax rate 28%.
I just said I'm opposed to that.
Let me finish my thought. She wants to make it 28%. What does that do? That causes American companies to say, you know what? I'm going to go outsource this. I'm taking my business out of the United States. Donald Trump, on the other hand, wants to reduce the corporate tax to 15% so that American companies stay in this country. And he spent all day in Georgia yesterday talking about reducing the corporate tax on companies, making sure that there are R&D tax credits for businesses that are going to do business in the United States, having an ambassador or global ambassador to bring businesses back to the United States, putting them on federal land and with low regulations and where they have special tax credits. He is bringing manufacturing back to the United States. She is forcing it out. And in addition to the inflation that is a tax in itself, this whole idea that she's basically saying, I grew up middle class and he's upper class. You know what's sick about this whole quote? She says, for Donald Trump, our economy works best if it works for the owners of the skyscrapers. Donald Trump is the guy who signed the checks for the people that build the skyscrapers, whether it was the Teamsters or the builders or the carpenters or the electricians, all of those families who had the job on those big buildings and those skyscrapers that Donald Trump built had that money and had that job because of Donald Trump. What has she done for any American other than raise inflation?
You all interrupted me. Just one thing. The current corporate tax rate is 21%.
Right.
But Donald Trump, he wants to lower it to 15. My challenge with that, judges, we have a $36 trillion debt. At some point, we all have to be a part. And the 21%, I think, is the right thing. I don't think we should raise it to 28. And 15, I don't know the benefit we get from it. And finally, we spend more, $1 trillion to pay to service our debt. That's more than we spend on national defense. At some point, we have to reckon with
this. This is the first time the national debt has reached the GDP. It's 100% since World War II. Right. They own it.
Both parties own it.